Hey guys! Tonight's story carries us back to the shadowy corners of a medieval manor where superstition flickered in every hearth fire and every creaking stair might have been a warning from beyond. As always, settle in with soft light, let the world grow quiet, and imagine yourself walking not into history's grand halls, but into its kitchens, corridors, and the cold, damp cellars that held more than just barrels of salted fish. You wake up in the dark. Not early morning dark, but the other kind, that thick, heavy black that presses in before even the roosters begin their wheezing chorus. You are already moving because you have to be. Servants do not get the luxury of lingering, especially not on a Thursday, and especially not in a manor where the cook believes that the first soul to light the hearth must be pure, or else the flame will burn crooked and the day will turn foul. You fumble with your worn woolen shift, fingers clumsy from cold. The chill bites through the gaps in the shutters, and the straw-filled mattress below you has long since stopped offering comfort. You whisper a short prayer, not to God exactly, but to the old spirits your mother once warned you never to name aloud. The ones she claimed lived behind the stove and under the floorboards. You don't believe in such things, not really, but you still whisper, just in case. The kitchen is still. Cold ash lies pale in the stone hearth like old bones, and the bundle of herbs above the mantel rattles faintly as the draught whispers through. You're the first down, as usual. The others trust you with the fire because you've never once let the flame falter. And because you always mutter that same odd rhyme, the one passed down from your grandmother and hers before her. It's nonsense, really. Something about bread rising and demons sleeping. But it comforts your hands while you strike the flint. The sparks crackle, the kindling catches. A dull orange bloom pulses in the hearth, casting long shadows across the stone walls. You feed it carefully, whispering each line of the rhyme like a priest with his psalter. You place 3 iron nails in a triangle near the flame. A custom old Nan taught you, something about guarding the hearth from wandering things. You don't remember what exactly, only that if you forget, your dreams turn foul. Outside the kitchen door, someone coughs. You pause, heart quickening. But it's only Tom, the stable boy, his footsteps heavy and wet from the frost. He crosses himself before he steps fully into the light. "Morning," he mutters, though the sun hasn't risen. You nod, gesturing toward the hearth. "Fire's true today." He doesn't answer. Instead, he glances once at the iron triangle, then looks away. He never asks about it. None of them do. Not even the priest who came last Lent and scolded you for the herbs drying near the oven. "Pagan rot," he'd said. "But the mistress never made you take them down, perhaps because the bread hasn't failed since you started hanging rosemary with yarrow." As the fire grows, the others shuffle in. The scullery girls, sleepy-eyed and stiff with cold. Gilda, the cook, trailing her apron and smelling of onions and smoke. She inspects the fire and gives you a nod, which, from her, is as close to a blessing as you'll get. Bread must be started, broth skimmed, potatoes peeled. But before anything is done, Gilda insists on silence, a full minute of it, every morning. "To listen," she says. "The house speaks before it stirs." So you stand still, staring into the fire, ears straining. Sometimes you hear the wood crack, the creak of beams settling above. Once, you swear you heard a whisper behind the larder door, but you said nothing. No one breaks the silence unless they want to scrub the latrine pit. The house is ancient, older than memory. Built on Roman stone, they say. The cellar beneath it is deep and strange, with rooms that have no clear purpose and walls that sweat in winter. Some say there's a shrine down there, behind the wine racks, but no one goes that far in anymore. Not since the year the kitchen boy vanished, leaving only his boots and a candle still burning. That was long before your time, but the story lingers like smoke in the rafters. You've been in service here for 7 years. Enough to know which floorboards sing, which doors stick, which corners to avoid when the light grows thin. The lady of the house keeps to her chapel and her cats. The Lord, when he visits, never glances your way. You are part of the walls, part of the rhythm, but you keep your ears open, because the manor does speak, not in words, but in knocks, creaks, and sudden cold draughts. This morning, as you knead the dough, the window pane fogs up, though no breath touches it. Tom says he found a dead bird in the stable. Not torn or pecked, just still, its eyes open and dry. Gilda tosses a pinch of salt over her shoulder and mutters something in a tongue you don't understand. You do the same, just to be safe. Before sunrise, the mistress will inspect the household altar, a carved nook in the stone wall behind the stairs. A single candle, a bowl of herbs, and a wooden figure no one touches, not even the priest. It's not on the list of saintly relics, but every servant who's lasted long in this house knows to bow when passing it, and every newcomer who didn't, well, they left quickly, ill or frightened or both. You've never seen the figure clearly, only its shadow, but sometimes you think it watches. Just slightly, the fire burns steady now, breakfast simmers, the rest of the house stirs, but something in the air still feels off. A sort of tension, like wool pulled too tight. You shake your head and press harder into the dough. Whatever it is, it'll pass. It always does. Probably. The kitchen, now fully awake, buzzes with motion, but not with chatter. In this house there is an understanding. Words in the morning carry further than intended. The old superstition says spirits don't sleep past cockcrow, and words might stick to walls like soot to chimney stone. You rinse your hands in a basin by the fire, the water still cold despite its nearness to flame, and move to the wooden table where a pail of milk sits waiting. It's from the manor's single dairy cow, a squat brown creature with one ear notched by something no one ever explained. Milking her is your job, always done in silence, and always with your right hand gloved in linen. A bare palm, it said, steals the cow's warmth and fouls the milk. Now that it's in the pail, your task is to guard it while it rests. Yes, guard. The milk must settle, separate. It must not be left unattended, not even for a blink too long, or so the older servants warn. There's a belief, still held firm in this kitchen, that if the milk is left alone before sunrise, it can curdle, not from cold, but from curses. Some say a wandering spirit, jealous of the household's peace, might dip an unseen finger into it. Others whisper of milk witches, unseen, unwelcome presences that slip through cracks and cause spoilage with a breath. So, you watch. Steam curls softly from the pale surface. You stare into it as you've been taught, murmuring under your breath the rhyme your great-aunt stitched into your memory. The same one Gilda allows, though she claims not to believe in milk nonsense. Still and white, the morning's breath, no stirring hand, no touch of death. Watchful eye and warming hearth will keep the cream in gentle birth. You whisper it slowly, once forward, once back. You don't know if it works, but the milk's never spoiled under your watch. Behind you, the other girls sweep, chop, and stir. The scent of leeks hits the air, mingled with coal smoke and rising bread. All of it good signs. There is a rhythm to this place, strange but steady. Every gesture, from tossing salt to spinning 3 times before entering the root cellar, is unspoken law, not church law perhaps, but kitchen law. And here, that's what matters. You hear Gilda cluck her tongue. Something's off with the soup today. No, too thin. She adds barley and mutters about weak bones and worse luck. No soup, no strength, she says, which is code for we need the stew thick enough to satisfy even the ghosts. You don't ask questions when she drops in the little bone charm she keeps wrapped in cloth. Some talisman given by a traveller years ago. It's shaped like a bird or a tooth, maybe both. She insists it keeps the broth honest. You just keep watching the milk. Across the room, Lisbeth, the youngest scullery maid, barely 10, knocks over a broom. It clatters loud against the stone. The room freezes. Gilda stares. You all stare. A broom falling unprovoked, especially before breakfast, is a bad omen. Not always death, but something. Bad harvest, sick animal, unruly guest. Lisbeth looks ready to cry. Gilda sighs, wipes her hands and walks over. She picks up the broom, sets it upright, and spits softly on the bristles. Then she taps the lintel above the door 3 times and spits again. The tension breaks like thin ice. "Won't be death, then," mutters Tom from the hallway. "Just boils or blisters." The cook throws him a scowl. "Only if you speak of it again, so don't." By now the milk is nearly ready. The surface is calm, cream forming in the way it should. You gently skim it, folding it into a smaller crock and sealing it with a cloth. Another task complete. Another little victory over the strange forces that nudge the edges of daily life. You're allowed a few sips of barley tea before the next round begins, preparing the herbs for the mistress's noon draught. She is a quiet woman, your mistress. Her hands are always wrapped in fine cloth, though she never leaves the house. Some say she was touched by the moon as a child. Others say worse. But no one denies she knows things. She can smell illness 3 days before it hits. She sees through stone, some say. And she keeps a book of names no priest has ever blessed. You don't deal with her directly, only carry the dried leaves to her maid. Yarrow, fennel, some crushed nettle today. You try not to think about the waxy doll she once left in the warming oven by mistake. Its hair looked real. You didn't ask. Instead, you walk the herbs up the back stair, past the carved figure in the wall. It watches again, or doesn't. It always feels like it does. You leave the bundle at the threshold. No one opens the door. Back downstairs, Gilda has begun the bread blessing, a ritual even the most skeptical follow. Before the loaves go into the oven, she takes a sprig of dried holly and lays it across the top. Just one. Always holly, never ivy. Ivy invites snakes, she says. The bread will rise, hopefully. If it does not, no one eats it. It is thrown to the pigs, who seem unaffected. Which only proves they have no souls, as Gilda often mutters. You finish your shift by sweeping the same corner you always do, the one behind the salt barrel. No one ever finds anything there, but you're meant to sweep it daily, in silence. To stir the resting, Gilda once said, and wouldn't elaborate. By mid-morning the manor hums, but in the kitchen, beneath the rhythms of work, the rituals hold everything together like invisible thread. Each pinch of salt, each tap of wood, each rhyme under the breath, none of them grand, all of them necessary. Because in this place, belief is not about faith, it is about survival. The day edges forward, but the sun barely pushes its way through the grimy windows. Light in the manor is more suggestion than presence, grey and flickering, shaped more by fire than sky. You've finished with the milk, the dough, the herbs. Now comes your least favourite task, the linens. You carry a rough basket of soiled cloths from the upper rooms toward the cold side corridor that leads to the wash basin. It's narrow here. Stone walls sweating dampness, even in summer. This is the hallway where you never run. No one does. not even the boys when they're full of mischief and chasing each other with broom bristles. This hallway has a history. It's the only part of the house with no tapestries. The wall has strange cracks that look like claw marks or words long worn smooth. There are stories, of course. One says a priest once tried to bless it, and his candle went out 3 times in a row. Another claims the passage used to be a nun's cloister, back when the manor was something holier, and she went mad in that stretch of corridor, scratching prayers into the stone with her fingernails. But you don't think about that, you just walk, slowly. Eyes ahead, never touch the left wall, not because you believe, not exactly, but because your hand once brushed the stone and your skin itched for 2 days straight. Coincidence? Probably. The washroom is frigid. The stone tub sits deep and heavy, filled by hand from the rain barrels outside. Rainwater, not well water, because rain is sky-born, and sky things, you've been told, are cleaner than things that come from underground. Still, you always mutter a blessing under your breath as you kneel and dip the first cloth. You scrub, you rinse, you wring out blood from the Lord's handkerchiefs. His nosebleeds are frequent and odd. You don't ask. You scrub lye soap into bed linens and whisper the protection rhyme, the one to keep lice from waking. Even the mistress's maid uses it. Suddenly there's a knock on the window. You freeze. The window's too high for anyone to knock on from outside, and there's no ledge. But then a shadow flits past. A bird, maybe. Yes, probably a bird. You return to your work, faster now, more focused. You do not look up again until the basin is nearly empty and your hands are raw. On your way back, you pass the chapel. It's empty. The priest only visits on saints' days, and the Lord's family rarely bothers unless death is in the air. Still, the room is always tidy, candles trimmed, the Bible dusted, the altar cloth smells faintly of myrrh and something less pleasant. Mold, maybe. The tapestry behind the altar shows a saint you can't name, standing in fire but smiling. His eyes follow you, or they seem to. No one likes to dust the chapel, not because it's haunted, though some claim they hear breathing when kneeling alone, but because it feels watched. Like everything you think, there is heard louder than in other rooms. Back in the kitchen, the mood has shifted. Lisbeth is crying. Tom sits pale, one hand clenched around a small coin, a silver piece, rare and glinting. Where'd you get that? Gilda's voice is sharp. Floor, just in the corner, by the barrels. Tom looks afraid now, not proud. Gilda takes the coin, wraps it in a square of black cloth, and places it on the hearthstone. Never, ever pick up silver from shadows, she mutters. That's payment for something not finished. You feel the cold return, deep in your spine. Lisbeth hiccups and whispers, It blinked at me. The coin, before he touched it. No one scolds her. Instead, you all turn to your tasks more intently, pretending the fire is warmer than it is. The rest of the morning passes with heavy silence and the slap of dough on boards. Lunch is served upstairs. You don't go, you rarely see the family, unless they're sick or celebrating. And today is neither. Instead, you're sent to polish the brass in the hallway leading to the storage cellar. The same cellar with the low steps and the door that never fully shuts. You hate that job most of all. The brass is fine, dull from candle soot. But the air down there feels thick, like breathing someone else's breath. You light a stubby candle, wedge it into a saucer, and carry it with one hand while your cloth works in slow circular motions. On the third sconce, you feel it. The change in air. A sudden coolness that brushes your cheek like a damp hand. The candle flickers. You hold your breath. Don't run, never run. You whisper a blessing again, though your voice shakes. And then behind the door at the end of the corridor, the one that never shuts, you hear the smallest sound, not footsteps, not a voice, a whisper, a single word, your name. You freeze, you are ice. You don't move until the candle's flame settles again. You finish the polishing with shaky hands, and when you pass the door, you don't glance through the crack. You don't want to see. You never want to see. You return to the kitchen, pale, silent. Gilda looks at you once, then offers a mug of broth, hot, salted, a special kind. The one with thyme and rosemary and something bitter. Drink it. Don't say a word. You obey. In this house, sometimes silence is the only charm, strong enough to hold. Afternoon brings no warmth. The hearth glows, but the manor's stones hold chill like a grudge. You've changed out the linen cloths for dry ones and returned the polished brass to its gentle shine, but something still clings to your skin. Not dirt, not sweat. Something else, something watching. The bread is nearly done. You can smell it, that coarse, crusty scent of barley and rye, faintly sharp, but comforting in its own way. Bread in this house isn't just food, it's a measure of protection. Each loaf is marked before baking, 3 cuts in a triangle or cross, depending on the day of the week. You don't ask why, you just do it. Gilda, meanwhile, has gone silent. That's never good. She stares into the fire as if reading a message from the coals. You've seen her like this before, especially on days when the wind comes from the east. She's a woman of instincts and signs, not sermons. And when she mutters her short, sharp blessings, everyone listens, even the priest if he happens to be around. Around the 3rd hour after noon, the house bell rings. Not the handbell for meals, the high bell. The one kept in the corridor above the master's study. It rings only on its own. The clang echoes through the beams like a ripple across still water. Everyone pauses, even the cat. You feel it like a tug beneath your ribs. Gilda curses under her breath and throws a dried juniper branch into the hearth. The smell is sharp and smoky, biting at your eyes. She snaps her fingers for Tom. Upstairs, check the bell cord, make sure it's still tied up. Tom swallows hard but nods and vanishes up the narrow stair. You don't envy him. You continue preparing the evening bread trays. As you stack the loaves, you make sure each one faces the same direction, cut mark outward, crust slightly cracked. It's habit now, but you remember when old Marin showed you how. Never turn the back of the bread to the door, she'd said. It invites forgetting, and the dead forget slow. She's been gone 3 winters. Slipped in the snow, they said, but no one uses her knife. It's still there, tucked in the bone drawer. Ah, yes, the bone drawer. You pass it every day. It's part of the long table at the back of the kitchen. 4 drawers in all. 1 for cloth, 1 for dried herbs, 1 for broken utensils, and 1 no one opens without knocking first. That's the bone drawer. Inside are odds and ends, pieces too small to use, too large to throw away. Chicken bones carved with initials, a lamb's knuckle wrapped in red thread, an old comb missing its teeth, carved from something not quite ivory. Everyone denies using them. But things vanish from the drawer and reappear. You've touched it only once, on accident. You were reaching for a cloth and pulled the wrong drawer. Inside, something rattled and whispered your name. Or maybe it was just your heart pounding too loud to know for sure. You never touched it again. The sun lowers now, that late medieval dimness seeping through the narrow windows. Shadows stretch and bend oddly in this house, as if trying on new shapes before settling into place. This is when the most careful customs take over. No whistling, no singing, no sudden laughter. These invite attention. You watch Lisbeth quietly hang 3 garlic bulbs above the pantry door. One of them is soft and half rotten. Still, she doesn't throw it away. Gilda told her once, even spoiled things hold power if they're remembered. Meanwhile, the mistress hasn't been seen all day. That in itself isn't unusual. But the stair leading to her chamber creaks more than normal, and no one has climbed it. You all hear it. No one mentions it. Dinner prep begins. You dice root vegetables slowly, listening to the crunch and scrape of the knife. Each piece must be turned 3 times before hitting the pot. Gilda claims it balances the stew. You think it's just another of her compulsions. Still you do it. Tom returns, pale, breathless. "Bell cord was cut," he whispers. Gilda stiffens. "Frayed?" "Number cut, clean through, like with a blade." The cook doesn't speak. She opens the drawer where she keeps the blessed salt, the real kind, from the bishop's visit last Easter. She throws a pinch into the fire, one onto the threshold and one into Tom's hair. He doesn't complain, just wipes his eyes, which sting now from the juniper smoke. No one asks about the bell again that evening. As you prepare the table trays, you notice something odd. One loaf is gone, not misplaced. Gone. You recount 3 times, 9 loaves. There should be 10. You glance around. No one's near the bread. The cat sits high on a shelf, licking its paws. You whisper, "Not tonight," under your breath and replace the loaf with a fresh one. Later you find the missing one near the chapel door, untouched but warm, as if someone had been holding it. You do not touch it again. You cover it with a cloth and leave it there. After supper, as the last trays are scrubbed and the firebank set for the night, you check the bread stacks once more. The replaced loaf, gone again. Gilda sees you staring and nods once. "Some hungers," she says softly. "Don't leave when the flesh does." You sleep lightly that night, not in fear exactly, but with a kind of awareness. One eye on the door, one ear on the wind, one hand curled around the iron nail you keep under your straw mattress. Because in this house and in your role, belief isn't about choice, it's about survival. Night begins the moment the last tray is washed and the ash raked soft in the hearth. By then, your hands ache from the work, and your back has taken on the familiar curve of those who stoop from sunrise to twilight. But still, your day is not done. Not really, because there is always something left to tend, some charm to reset, some corner to sweep before the dark fully settles in. The final ritual of the kitchen is the candle test. Gilda insists on it. Every night, after the main rush has passed, a single beeswax candle is lit from the hearth and carried to each threshold. The pantry, the door to the back stairs, the entrance to the root cellar. The candle must burn steady. If it flickers, you open a window and sweep the floor 3 times widdershins. If it gutters low, you scatter salt in a circle and leave it untouched until morning. If it burns blue, you don't speak. Tonight, Gilda chooses you to carry the flame. The candle is short, worn from use, and your hand trembles slightly as you cup the base in your palm and shield the flame from drafts. You start with the pantry. The flame dances a little, but holds. Next, the back stairs. A slow pulse, but no color shift. You whisper the rhyme anyway. Something about turning wheels and silent feet. Then the root cellar. You hesitate. That door has always felt colder than the rest. Not just temperature, something deeper. The kind of cold that wraps around the bones like grief or memory. Still you walk forward, each step slow, deliberate. You open the door. The candle flickers once, twice. Then it shifts. Not yellow, not gold, blue, a soft, quiet blue, not brilliant. Just enough to notice. The flame narrows like it's listening. You freeze. Behind you, Gilda appears. She sees the color and pulls you gently back by the shoulder. "Leave it," she whispers. "You don't question." You set the candle down just inside the cellar door and back away. She shuts it quietly, latches it with a rusted hook, then makes the sign against the evil eye with both hands. Neither of you speaks. Back in the main kitchen, Tom is stirring a pot of rendered fat, humming under his breath. Lisbeth is asleep, head on a sack of flour. Gilda nods toward the wall where the family's meal tally is chalked, a symbol beside each mark: fish, fowl, bread. One has changed. The mark is still shaped like a loaf, but someone, not one of you, has drawn a second line through it. "Double hunger," Gilda mutters, "not for the living." You don't ask. Instead, you help her prepare the final tray. The one no one speaks of aloud. Every manor has one, or so you've heard from traders. A meal left in an unused chamber near the oldest wall. A tray of bread, salt, broth, and a sliver of dried apple. No meat. Never meat. That draws too much attention. Tonight, the tray is yours to carry. You climb the back stair, passing the carved figure in the wall. It's darker now, but you swear its shadow has shifted, its head tilted ever so slightly like it's listening. The unused chamber is at the end of the hall. No one sleeps there. No one speaks of it. But each night, the tray is set on the low stool beside the hearth. The fire never burns. The room is colder than stone. You push open the door, stepping lightly. Your breath fogs in the air. You place the tray carefully, avoiding eye contact with the old painting on the far wall. It's a faded thing. A woman, maybe, with too many eyes. Or perhaps the paint has cracked oddly over time. You don't look long enough to decide. You set the tray, bow once, and whisper the standard phrase. For quiet nights and quiet walls. Then you leave, walking backward, until your heel meets the hall. Back in the kitchen, Gilda is finishing her tea. She hands you a mug. Bitter, earthy. Valerian, probably. Maybe wormwood. "To sleep," she says. "To silence." You nod and sip. The night deepens. The manor exhales. Somewhere in the distance, a door creaks, wind, perhaps. But you know better than to listen too closely. Better to drink, to lie still, and to keep the iron nail close under your pillow. Because when the candle burns blue, the rules change, and the living aren't the only ones who follow the old routines. You sleep in the loft above the kitchen. It's warmest there, if such a word can even be used. The heat from the hearth creeps up through the stone and timbers, lingering just long enough to dull the ache in your bones before it fades into night's chill. Your bed is straw-stuffed canvas, not fresh. Nothing in the manor is ever quite fresh. But it's dry, and that alone makes it a comfort. You curl under your scratchy wool blanket, your fingers brushing the cold iron nail you keep near your head. Some say iron repels the old ones, the forgotten things. Others say it attracts them. Either way, it gives you something to grip when the shadows feel too close. Tonight, your dreams come fast. At first, they're familiar. You're in the kitchen kneading bread, only the dough is bleeding through your fingers like water. And no matter how much you flour the board, it keeps vanishing. You look up. Gilda stands over the hearth, but her mouth is sewn shut with red thread, and she's pointing, again and again, at the door behind the spice shelf. There is no door behind the spice shelf. You wake with a jolt, your breath short. The loft is dark, the kind of blackness that presses against your skin. You listen. Below, the fire crackles low, but there's no movement, no voices, no sounds of footsteps. And yet, you feel something, a presence, not heavy, not angry, but there. You whisper a charm. just softly, one your aunt taught you during the fever winter. Ash to ash, wall to wall, sleep comes sweet and harm be small. The air lightens. Eventually you sleep again. The next morning is wet, not with rain, but with that medieval damp that seeps into everything, including your mood. Your shift clings to your skin, and your boots squelch against the packed earth of the kitchen floor. Gilda is already at the hearth, scowling at a pot of oats. "Night left something sour," she mutters. You nod, no point pretending otherwise. Lisbeth refuses to speak, her eyes wide. You hear her whispering to her doll, Modewunk, not the one she plays with during chores, but the one she hides, the one with no face. Gilda doesn't stop her. She never does. You take your usual post at the hearth and begin sorting the herbs. But your eyes keep drifting to the spice shelf. The dream lingers like a bruise in your thoughts. After the bread is set and the milk settled, you find yourself standing near it. There is no door, just the stone wall behind the shelf, cold, ordinary. But there's a crack you hadn't noticed before, thin, vertical, like something once sealed. Gilda appears beside you without a sound. "You saw it, didn't you?" You say nothing. She nods. "It opens only in dreams. Let it stay there." You nod too, but something inside you feels shifted, like your sleep reached further than it should have. That afternoon, a traveling monk stops by the manor, thin as reeds, eyes like smoke. He carries no books, no relics, just a walking stick carved with tiny holes. He doesn't ask for bread or shelter. He asks to bless the hearth. Gilda hesitates, then agrees. He steps inside, chants in a tongue you do not recognize, and places a bundle of herbs atop the mantle, rue, bay, and something pale as ash bark. When he leaves, Gilda burns the bundle. The smoke curls green and smells like winter. "Just in case," she says. No one asks what case she means. That evening, before sleep, you pass the spice shelf again. There is still no door, but now you are certain it dreams of opening, and you wonder what dreams you've walked into and which ones might soon walk into you. The morning arrives grey and weightless. You wake as always, before the light, before the bells, before the roosters remember their role in the world. The hearth still breathes the last embers of the night, a red thread of warmth in a sea of damp stone. Your first task, as always, is the fire. You kneel beside the ashes, brushing aside last night's remnants, and prepare the kindling. But something stops you. There in the soot are marks, not footprints, nothing so mundane. Lines, almost symbols, scrawled in the soft ash, as if traced by a stick or a finger. 3 concentric circles, one inside the other, with a jagged cross through the center. You don't recognize it from any charm Gilda uses, and that alone is what makes you uneasy. You don't touch it. Instead, you call for Gilda. She arrives moments later, her apron already dusted with flour, and crouches beside you. She says nothing at first, only squints, then stands. "Cover it," she mutters. "With what?" She hands you the kitchen salt tin. "All of it." You do as you're told. A thick layer of salt poured in a slow, steady circle. When you finish, the hearth looks like a ritual space. You light the fire carefully, speaking no words, not even the usual rhyme. Gilda watches until the flames settle. Then, without another glance, she returns to her kneading. Lisbeth comes in soon after, clutching her faceless doll again. She walks in a wide arc around the hearth. No one needs to tell her what happened. Later that day, you're sent with a bucket to fetch water from the manor's well. It's a task you're used to, but today it carries weight. The air is too still, the crows too quiet. You walk the path with deliberate steps. The well sits at the edge of the manor's grounds past the herb garden and the lean-to where broken tools rest like tired soldiers. It's old, older than the house, maybe, with a worn stone lip and iron crank that screeches if turned too fast. You lower the bucket slowly, listening to the splash below. As you begin to raise it, you notice her. A woman, standing just beyond the hedgerow. You freeze. She is wrapped in dark cloth, face mostly hidden, but her posture is too still, too exact. You don't recognize her from the village. She wears no brooch, no livery. Her hands are bare, folded neatly at her waist. You blink. She's gone. The bucket hits the well wall and sloshes. You nearly lose your grip. You breathe deeply, tie the pail tight, and return to the kitchen. You say nothing. When Gilda sees your face, she stops what she's doing. Did she look at you? You nod. She was near the hedge. You nod again. Gilda pulls a small satchel from the pantry, dried nettles, bone set, black peppercorns. She sprinkles a line across the kitchen threshold. That side of the grounds is thinning, she says. We'll stay inside after dark for 3 days. No one argues. That evening, Tom finds an old shoe in the ashes behind the stove. It isn't his, it isn't yours, it's far too small. And stuffed inside it is a dried sprig of belladonna. You all go to sleep earlier than usual. Gilda insists on it. No stories, no singing, no firebank, just dark. You lie in your loft, blanket tight around your shoulders, the nail clutched in your hand. But sleep doesn't come easy. You think of the marks in the ash, the woman by the hedge, the salt melting in the hearth's heat. And then you remember something Gilda once said in passing. Sometimes the manor remembers things even the stones want to forget. Tonight, you think it's beginning to remember again. The next morning, the manor feels tighter somehow, as though the very walls have inched inward overnight. The air is close, and your breath forms small clouds with each word, even though it's not yet winter. No one mentions it aloud, but you see the others notice. Tom knocks his boots out twice instead of once before stepping into the kitchen. Lisbeth slips a scrap of red ribbon around her wrist, the kind her grandmother once told her wards off ill-willed watchers. You light the fire again, this time whispering a double prayer, one to the saints, the other older than scripture. You don't say it to anyone in particular. You don't even say it loud, but you feel it leave your mouth like a sigh of warm air brushing against cold stone. There's a new task today, dusting the tapestry in the main hall. It's rarely touched. The fabric is old, its threads dulled from years of candle smoke and silence. The image it shows is uncertain. A cloaked figure, seated beneath a tree, or perhaps a skeletal saint offering bread to crows. No one quite agrees. No one likes to look too closely. You bring a cloth and ladder, climb carefully, and begin wiping down the edges. As your hand works across the top corner, your fingers catch on something, a needle. Tucked into the weave, fine and blackened. An iron needle, sharp even after what must have been decades. You pull it free gently, wrap it in cloth, and bring it down. Gilda takes one look and nods solemnly. It's a holding pin, she says. Old magic, for keeping things quiet. You glance back at the tapestry. Should we put it back? She shakes her head. Number, not now. What's held is already stirring. You don't ask what she means. Later in the day, you help prepare vinegar cloths. Soaked strips laid across doorways and set beside windows to cut the heavy air, as Gilda puts it. The vinegar stings your nose, but the ritual feels right, necessary. You wipe down the kitchen door's latch 3 times with a cloth soaked in it, and for a moment, the weight on your chest lifts slightly. But the relief is short-lived. At dusk, you hear it. A knock. Not at the front, Not at any real door, but deep, muffled as if from beneath the floorboards. One knock, then another, two, no more, no one moves. Gilda's stirring spoon stills mid-swirl. Tom drops a ladle and it clatters too loud in the silence. 2 knocks is a memory, Gilda whispers. 3 would be a visitor. 4, a warning. 2 is something remembering where it lived. Lisbeth whimpers. Gilda shushes her softly and begins boiling rosemary in water, letting the scent flood the room. The steam curls around the rafters and settles over your arms like a light blanket. You let it calm your breath. You let the scent wrap around your thoughts like gauze around a wound. That night, there's no offering tray. The unused chamber door is sealed with wax and nettle string. You're told not to even look at it. You sleep uneasy, though the fire is banked warm and the loft quiet. Your dreams are thick with symbols. A bird with no wings, a hand full of soil. A mirror that shows a kitchen not your own. You wake before dawn with the taste of iron on your tongue and the image of the tapestry still in your eyes. The manor groans softly in the wood and stone. And below it all, somewhere you cannot reach, something knocks. Just twice. The dawn sky arrives colourless, as though the heavens themselves have chosen to remain neutral. You rise slower than usual, not from laziness, but caution, as though the stillness might shatter if moved through too quickly. Your limbs ache in new places, your dreams already slipping through your fingers like cold water. But one image remains. A spool of thread unwinding itself endlessly across a stone floor. When you reach the kitchen, Gilda is already there, sharpening her knife in rhythmic strokes that sound like breath. She doesn't greet you. None of you greet anyone this morning. Words feel dangerous, like they might summon something listening in. From behind the hearthstones, you begin your morning tasks. The milk first. You settle the pail and whisper the rhyme, slower today, like a chant. But your fingers falter as you skim the cream because something is tied around the handle of the ladle. A red thread, not the one Lisbeth wears. This one is newer, cleaner. It loops in a tiny knot no longer than your finger. You hold it up. Gilda sees it. Her face tightens, but she doesn't speak. She just walks over, unties it, wraps it in a square of black cloth, and tucks it into her apron as if it were a bone. Sometimes they leave reminders, she says. Ignore it. That's the only respect we can show. You nod, you ignore it, but your skin remembers. It prickles every time you dip the ladle into the milk again. The rest of the morning is quiet, tense. Even the cat refuses to stretch near the fire, choosing instead to perch atop the grain sacks in the corner, tail flicking like a pendulum. Gilda makes broth with more garlic than usual. You sprinkle salt without asking. Everything takes longer, but no one minds. Around the 6th hour, a rider appears at the edge of the manor grounds, tall, wrapped in thick wool, a hood drawn over their face. No banner, no sigil. The bell near the stables rings once, a warning. You and Tom are sent to shut the windows. Gilda begins muttering softly as she covers the kitchen's mirrors. Small ones, but still a risk. Faces wander through reflections, she once told you. Not all of them kind. The rider doesn't approach, just watches for a while, then turns and leaves. Still, Gilda insists that all the salt lines be redrawn, and Lisbeth is made to scatter dried lemon peel in each room, a sour thing to draw bitterness out. You don't question it, you only help. That evening you're tasked with restocking the herb wall, a shelf near the pantry filled with bundles of sage, yarrow, rue, fennel, some for food, some not. You climb the small ladder and begin arranging, but as you reach for the dried sage, you see something tucked behind the bunch, a folded piece of paper. No one in the house uses paper except the steward, and he certainly doesn't leave it among the herbs. You unfold it slowly. It is blank at first, but as you tilt it toward the hearthlight, faint lines appear. Not ink, not charcoal, almost like a burn that didn't blacken. A map of the manor, but not as it is. Rooms are misplaced, corridors twist. The cellar stretches downward far beyond what you know to be true. At the center of it all is a mark, 3 concentric circles with a jagged cross. You swallow and fold it back, tucking it into your apron. You do not show Gilda, not yet. That night you sit in bed longer before lying down. You place your iron nail carefully beneath your pillow and whisper the charm 3 times. As sleep pulls at your edges, you feel something tug at your thoughts. Not a dream, but a direction toward the cellar and the thread waiting somewhere in the dark. You do not tell Gilda about the map. All morning it weighs against your apron like a secret talisman. You go through the motions, washing the porridge pot, skimming milk, feeding scraps to the hens. But the folded parchment sits at your hip, quietly humming with unease. Every time you pass the root cellar door, you feel it warm slightly through the cloth. The day proceeds strangely. The sun never quite breaks through the clouds. The chickens refuse to lay. Tom claims to have heard singing beneath the floorboards. Like old women, he says. Or frogs learning Latin. Gilda tells him to boil nettles and pour the water down the drain. They don't like the bitterness. At midday, the mistress appears. It's rare. She walks slowly through the corridor near the chapel, her hands wrapped in dark cloth. Her eyes are rimmed in shadow, and her voice, when she speaks to her maid, sounds like paper tearing. You bow low. She doesn't see you, or perhaps chooses not to. Afterward, Gilda sends you for rosemary, fresh if possible. So you go to the garden behind the chapel, overgrown now, a tangle of herbs and forgotten fences. The rosemary bush stands stubborn and bent, covered in dust from the road. You cut a few stems, careful not to pull too many, but as you rise, you see it again, that same woman, beyond the hedge, the one you saw near the well. Only this time she's closer, standing still, wrapped in the same dark shawl, hands folded, eyes hidden. You blink. She's gone again. You return to the kitchen with the rosemary. You say nothing, but that evening, as the others tuck into bowls of barley soup, you slip the parchment from your apron and study it again. The map pulses softly under candlelight, not with light, but with intention. The cellar. You've been there, of course, many times, but never far, never beyond the wine racks and the old brine barrel no one moves anymore. But the map suggests there's more, far more. Hallways, chambers, a spiral of rooms carved downward like a coiled rope. After supper, as Gilda scrubs her hands with vinegar and Lisbeth curls up with her doll, you take a candle and slip away. You tell no one. The cellar door creaks open. The air is cold. Not unpleasant, more a deep, settled chill like the breath of someone asleep. You descend the stairs, one hand on the wall, one shielding the candle. It sputters slightly but does not falter. At the bottom, you pass the familiar, the wine racks, the dry barrels, the stone sink with rusted rings in its basin. But the map spoke of more. You press further. Beyond a hanging cloth, once velvet, now eaten with damp, there is a narrow passage, half blocked by an old cupboard. You move it slowly, quietly. Behind it, steps, stone, worn smooth in the middle, leading down. You hesitate, then begin. The candle flickers blue at the third step, but you press on. The air grows denser, scented with damp stone and something older. Not rot, but memory. At the base, a room, circular, carved directly into the earth. No furnishings, just dust. And marks, the same symbol from the ash. The circles and jagged cross. is carved into the floor. In the center, something stands, a small iron bowl filled with stones, and at its edge, a red thread, unwound, stretching towards you. You don't step forward. You bow, just once, and whisper what your mother once told you to say when in doubt. I see you. I serve. I remember. The air shifts. Not a wind, but a release. Like a sigh, the candle steadies. You turn and climb back the stairs. You do not speak of it that night, but in the morning, the kitchen feels lighter. The bread rises perfectly. The milk does not sour. And Gilda, without asking, hands you a new charm to wear. A disc of iron pressed with 3 dots and a line. You'll need this, she says softly, now that you've walked the spiral. You say nothing, but the thread around your wrist tightens and does not let go. The next morning begins unusually soft. The sky is pale, almost white, and the kitchen carries the faintest smell of lavender, though none has been burned or boiled. Even the fire lights easily catching on the first try, no prayer needed. The bread rises well. The milk settles like a sigh. Tom even hums again, a low, tuneless song under his breath. Lisbeth speaks in complete sentences, and for the first time in days, the cat dares to curl near the hearth. You wonder if it's over. The tension, the unseen watching, the memory in the stone. But the iron disc hanging from your neck is warm to the touch, even though you've kept it tucked beneath your shift. Not hot, not burning, just aware, like a small eye pressed gently to your skin. You work steadily, chopping leeks, grinding dried mushrooms, sorting oats, until Gilda hands you the basket of knives. Sharpening day, she says, but not at the table. Take them out near the smokehouse. You know why. Knives, when honed too near food, cut the house's tongue, as the saying goes. They turn flavor sour. They invite whispers. You don't understand how much of it is truth and how much tradition, but Gilda's never wrong about these things. So you carry the basket to the bench beside the smokehouse, the one that faces the orchard, a gnarled patch of stunted trees, their apples long gone for the season. The stone wheel is cold, as expected, and takes a few cranks before it turns smooth. You start with the smallest blade, Lisbeth's herb knife, used mostly for mint and valerian. As the stone spins, you hear it, breathing, not loud, not close, but steady like someone asleep just beneath the ground. You stop. The sound stops. You test the blade. Sharp enough to split rosemary in mid-air. You move on. The sound returns. Not from behind, not from the trees, beneath, deep beneath. You keep sharpening. You do not speak. The wheel turns. The rhythm steadies. The breathing grows fainter, or your ears adjust. Either way, by the last knife, Gilda's cleaver, heavy and dull-edged, the world feels calm again. You carry the knives back inside, wrapped in linen soaked with yarrow tea. That too is custom. So they don't remember what they cut, as the phrase goes. As you enter the kitchen, you notice something strange. The marks on the hearthstone, the ones Gilda draws with ash each morning, are not the same today. 3 lines, not 2, a curve instead of a cross. You glance at her. She sees, you notice. They changed last night, she says quietly. I didn't draw them that way. You want to speak, but something in her face silences you. That afternoon, a crow flies into the kitchen, not through the window, through the wall. You see it. One moment there's just shadow, the next a bird flapping madly in the rafters, scattering ash and flour with every beat. Tom ducks. Lisbeth screams. Gilda stands. She raises her hand, palm out. The crow stills in mid-air, then drops to the floor, not dead, just still. Its eyes blink. Once, slowly, then it vanishes, no sound. No feathers left behind, only a faint scent, like damp wool and iron. You all stand frozen. Gilda turns to you. You should sweep the cellar again. You nod. You gather the broom, the one with the copper wire wound near the bristles. You take the lantern, and without a word to the others, you descend the cellar steps. The air is still, but this time it feels respectful. The deeper chamber, the spiral room, is as you left it. The bowl remains, the stones undisturbed. But now, hanging beside the entryway, is a small piece of thread, blue, and tied in a sailor's knot, kind your brother once showed you, back before the fever took him. You reach for it, your iron disc warms, and far above you in the rafters of the kitchen, the cat hisses softly at nothing. Not to Gilda, not to Lisbeth, not even to the shadows in your dreams, which have lately begun to take the shape of staircases. You tuck the blue thread into the small seam inside your apron, where it presses softly against the red one from before. They don't touch. You make sure of that. The day begins in familiar fashion. You rise early, your body already remembering each motion before your thoughts fully wake. Light the hearth, settle the milk, murmur the rhyme, wash your hands 3 times. But everything feels quieter today, as though the manor itself is drawing a long breath inward. Lisbeth has begun talking to the walls again. Not just whispering, as she sometimes does, but full conversations. Half-remembered rhymes and questions about the past that no one taught her. Gilda lets it be. Some children carry echoes, she says. You hush an echo and the silence grows hungry. Mid-morning brings a small crisis. The soup spoon goes missing, not just any spoon either. The long-handled ironwood ladle that Gilda's had since she arrived in the house. Used for broth and only broth, she's said many times. It remembers warmth. Use it for anything else and the flavor turns. Everyone searches. The drawers, the pantry shelves, the hearthside hooks. Even the cat is interrogated, though it mostly just yawns in response. You find it near the chapel. Not inside, just resting on the step, clean, polished, as though it had never left the kitchen at all. You lift it, and for the briefest second your vision swims, not in pain but memory. You see hands, well, not yours, stirring a pot beside a hearth, much older than the one you know. You smell mint, smoke, and something like wild pear. You hear laughter, slow, deep, and unfamiliar. Then it's gone. You blink, and the spoon is once again just a spoon. You return it to Gilda without a word. She doesn't ask where you found it. She simply blesses it with a pinch of salt and places it back in its hook. That afternoon you help prepare the dried apples for winter. It's quiet work, slicing, laying them out on racks, dusting each piece with clove powder. Tom hums again that same strange tune that seems to echo even after he stops. As you work, you notice something odd about the slices. They form a pattern on the drying rack, rings and a jagged line. You pause, then rearrange them without speaking. The pattern dissolves, the room breathes easier. Later, Gilda pulls you aside. You've started seeing it, haven't you? You want to deny it. You want to keep your feet in the world of chores and quiet comforts. But instead you nod, she sighs, not in sadness, but inevitability. Some of us serve bread, some of us serve memory. The house decides. That night you tuck both threads, red and blue, beneath your pillow. You do not dream of fire or birds or women in shawls. You dream of a bowl of soup held by hands that tremble, and a voice, yours and not yours, whispering something into the steam. You wake before dawn, the scent of wild pear still lingering faintly in the air. Morning arrives with frost at the window's edge and a quiet undercurrent of expectation. There's no wind, no distant crow, no bark from the hound chained near the stables. Just the soft crackle of the fire as it catches kindling, and the hiss of milk rising gently in its pot. You move, slowly, deliberately, aware now that every task may be more than it seems. You grind the barley for porridge with the small hand mill, and the rhythm of it settles your mind. You murmur the charm that keeps insects from the flour, not out of superstition anymore, not entirely, but because you've begun to notice what happens on the rare days you forget it. After breakfast, you begin cleaning soot from the lower walls near the chimney flue, a chore neither noble nor interesting, but necessary. The stone gathers years of cooking smoke, and once in a while, Gilda insists it must be done. So the walls don't forget the light. You kneel and scrub with vinegar water and a stiff brush. As the soot comes away in streaks, something slowly emerges, a name, not written with chalk or paint, but scraped lightly into the stone long before your time. Brana. You stare at it. It means nothing to you, but something inside your chest stirs, like a bell ringing behind a closed door. You call for Gilda. She kneels beside you, her brow low. She stares at the letters for a long time before speaking. "There was a Brana here once," she says quietly. "Before my time. Cookmaid, they say. Never spoke above a whisper, disappeared one morning. No blood, no signs, just her apron folded at the chapel door." She reaches out and touches the name once. Sometimes they leave a mark if they were taken too quietly. You cover the name with salt and rinse again. It doesn't fade. Later, while gathering water from the well, you see the woman again, the one in the dark shawl. This time, she isn't beyond the hedge. She's beside it, closer. You don't freeze, you don't speak, you nod just once and continue filling the bucket. When you glance back, she's gone. Back in the kitchen, Gilda watches you closely. "She's not warning you anymore," she says. "She's watching." You ask, for the first time, who she is. Gilda doesn't answer. Instead, she places something in your hand, a small charm carved from applewood, worn smooth with use. It fits perfectly in your palm. "For when you go back down," she says simply. You don't ask how she knows you're planning to. That evening, as the last embers die down and Lisbeth drifts into sleep with her doll clutched tight, you light a candle and descend once more into the cellar. The spiral room is unchanged. Bold stones, dust and shadow, but on the wall now is a new mark, fresh, Brana again. But this time beneath it, your name, not scratched in fear, not carved in haste, just placed side by side. You kneel, holding the charm in your hand, and the air around you stills, as though the house itself has exhaled. The following morning arrives heavy with mist, the kind that doesn't quite fall but hovers, folding itself into every crack of wood and stone. You wake with the lingering weight of names in your mind, yours and Brana's, nestled together on the cellar wall like two ends of a tale half told. You press a hand to your chest where the applewood charm rests beneath your shift. It is warm, almost pulsing. In the kitchen, the routine resumes, but the air is slower. You can feel it in Gilda's movements, careful and deliberate, and in the way Tom no longer whistles. Lisbeth's voice is quieter too, her doll clutched tighter now, its cloth face growing smudged and worn. Even the cat seems watchful, tail flicking in slow, cautious arcs. You're tasked with baking the bread this morning. It's a sacred task in its own way, not holy in the church sense, but in the rhythm of old things that keep homes standing. The dough must be turned 9 times, always clockwise. The top must be scored with the mark of safety. 3 slashes and a dot in the center like a watchful eye. As you knead, your mind drifts back to the cellar. You wonder who carved the names. Was it Brana warning someone before she vanished? Or was it someone else entirely? Another servant who had seen too much and knew how quickly a person could be forgotten? The dough is sticky today. You add more flour, whispering the rhyme about keeping hunger from following you through dreams. Gilda told you once that the bread isn't just for nourishment. It's to keep the quiet company in the walls from growing restless. Bread makes the silence full, she said. Full things don't go searching. You slide the loaves into the hearth oven. The heat spills outward, wrapping around your arms, and for a moment, the world feels safe again. Grounded in the scent of baking rye and the creak of the spoon rack above your head. But then the smell shifts. Not bad, not spoiled, just different. For a moment, the air carries the scent of rose water and something sharp, like iron and root. You blink and it's gone, replaced once more by the familiar crusted warmth of rising bread. You pull the loaves when the tops crack, just so. Each one rests on the rack with its cut, facing out as always. But the third loaf, it's warm, too warm, as though it had been baked long before the others, as though it had been waiting. You touch it, then draw your hand back. The bottom is marked, not a burn, not a crack, a symbol, 3 circles and a jagged cross. You carry the loaf to Gilda in silence. She looks at it and nods, no surprise in her face. Something's remembering, she says, and remembering you. She doesn't say whether that's a blessing or a warning. That evening, the offering tray returns. Bread, salt, broth, and a strip of dried apple laid carefully by the chapel's outer door. You place the marked loaf beside it, as instructed. No prayers this time, just quiet. Before bed, you glance once more at the spice shelf, half expecting the hidden doorway from your dream to reveal itself again. It doesn't. But the crack in the stone behind it has widened ever so slightly. You lie awake longer than usual, your fingers around the charm, listening to the manor breathe. It creaks and sighs, but no knocks tonight. Just stillness, deep and vast. In the last moments before sleep, you remember something your aunt once told you when you were very small and frightened of shadows. Sometimes places remember you kindly. Sometimes they just remember. Tonight, you wonder which one this manor is. You wake to the sound of something falling. Not loudly, not destructively, just enough to disturb the soft veil of morning. For a long moment you lie still on your straw bed in the loft, listening. Nothing follows, no footsteps, no whispering wind beneath the beams, just the familiar creak of the settling walls. When you rise and descend into the kitchen, the air is thicker than usual. Not musty or damp, just occupied. The sort of heaviness that clings to your sleeves and seems to follow close behind you. You find the source of the sound soon enough. The mirror by the scullery has tipped forward, resting face down on the floor. No one moves it. No one comments. Mirrors are rarely trusted in the manor. They're small, hand-sized mostly, and covered with cloth when not in use. Gilda keeps the scullery mirror uncovered only for slicing herbs, saying it keeps the cuts clean. But it's not for faces, she warned once. Don't let your reflection catch your name. You wait until after the bread is proofed to pick it up. When you do, you're careful not to look directly into it. You wrap it in linen, wipe the frame, and only then angle it toward the wall again. But in the brief instant before it's fully covered, you glimpse something, not your face. The kitchen, empty, but subtly wrong. The pots hang reversed. The light falls from the wrong direction. And in the hearth, a shadow lingers when no one stands. You blink, and it's gone. You cover the mirror completely and place it in the storeroom, tucking lavender sprigs around its edges. Gilda says nothing when you tell her, just nods once and adds juniper to the fire. The rest of the morning continues as if nothing's changed. You chop turnips, sweep the ashes, lay fresh kindling, but you notice small shifts. The broom leaning against the wrong door, Lisbeth's doll missing its ribbon, a jar of dried nettle moved from its usual place. Gilda blames house tremors, which she explains are memory flutters, moments when the manor flexes against time. It forgets for a moment who belongs where, she says, then settles again like a sleeping dog twitching in its dream. That afternoon, the steward arrives with parchment and ink. He rarely enters the kitchen, but today he lays a ledger on the work table and speaks in clipped tones. Inventory. You're made to recite every loaf baked, every pot used, every bundle of herbs dried. Gilda assists, but there's tension in her hands. When the steward asks how many servants are currently active in the lower halls, Gilda pauses. 5, she says, then hesitates. 6, perhaps. He frowns. Which is it? Gilda shrugs. Best to assume 6, then feed 7. He says nothing and leaves. That evening, you recount the beds in the loft. 3 are used, yours, Lisbeth's, Tom's. Gilda sleeps downstairs. The 4th bed is made neatly, as always, though no one claims it. The 5th is bare, save for a carved comb resting on the pillow. You didn't put it there. And when you pick it up, your hand tingles. Not painfully, but with the feeling of something passed on, handed down. You place it carefully into the linen drawer and do not speak of it. That night, as you drift to sleep, you hear quiet footsteps in the hallway. Not hurried, not threatening, just passing through. The iron disc around your neck lies cool. You sleep with your face turned to the wall and your hand closed gently around the applewood charm. And in your dream, the mirror lies flat on the stone again, this time with Brana's name etched into its surface, just above a reflection that slowly turns to face you. The day begins wrong, not loudly wrong, no bells ringing backward or birds falling from the sky, just wrong in the quiet way. The way that clings to your skin and shifts the weight of your apron. Though nothing has changed. There is no dust in the kitchen, not a mote on the floor, not a smear on the sill. Even the soot under the bread oven seems to have been swept clean overnight. The stone is pale, bare, like something newly built. But the manor is not new, it hasn't been new for centuries. You kneel and run your hand along the floorboards, smooth, dry, clean. Behind you, Gilda enters with a bowl of leeks and stops short. She says only one word, reset. You ask her what she means and she just shakes her head slowly. Sometimes the house forgets, not entirely, just the surface, but it's always for a reason. Throughout the day, the stillness lingers. Every surface is polished, every bowl stacked neatly. The iron pots shine faintly in the hearthlight. No one claims to have done the cleaning. No one dares to say they slept through it. You find your own handwriting missing from the inventory log, the page blank, though you remember writing it just yesterday. Gilda's spice chart has vanished. Tom's tool hooks are bare, as if no one had ever hung a ladle there. And then, while fetching turnips from the cellar, you see it again. The wall, it's different. Where once the spiral chamber stood cold and bare, a narrow hallway has formed. Stone, damp, lined with niches. Each holds something small. A bowl, a comb, a shoe, a candle stub, a collection, a memory shelf. You step forward, drawn in. One niche holds the red thread, another holds the spoon from the scullery. A third contains a name carved into a sliver of bone. Brana. You do not touch them. At the end of the hall is a mirror. Not whole, fractured, silver flaking. Your reflection is splintered into pieces, but every shard shows you in a different task. In one, baking. In another, holding Lisbeth's doll. In a third, kneeling beside Gilda, hands bloodied, pressing herbs into someone's chest. You reach out to touch the frame. Your hand stops, not from fear, but understanding. This is not the house showing you your future. This is the house showing you what it remembers of you. When you return upstairs, the kitchen has changed again. The dust has returned. So has the soot. The spoon lies in the scullery once more. And on the table is a folded note, written in a hand you don't recognize. Let it sleep. It wakes only when watched. Gilda sees the paper. Says nothing, just pours you a mug of valerian tea and sits across from you, eyes unreadable. "I think it's chosen you," she says quietly. You don't ask what it is. You already know it isn't one thing, it's all of it. The walls, the breath, the memory in the bread, and the weight of being seen. Not as a servant, but as a thread in the old weaving. You drink your tea slowly. Outside, the wind rises for the first time in days, and the manor settles back into its dust, its silence, and its careful remembrance. The day begins with bread again, as so many days do, but today the dough does not rise. Not a little, not at all. Gilda frowns at it as though it's a misbehaving child, and then presses her hand flat to its surface. She listens. "It's remembering something," she says at last, "something too heavy to lift." She wraps it in a linen cloth, sprinkles it with salt, and sets it on the sill facing the orchard. "Let the cold take it," she murmurs. "Let it unlearn." You prepare another batch. This one rises, though slowly. You don't question it. You simply work, your hands moving as though they were always meant for this. The measure, the warmth, the fold of the cloth. The scent of flour and yeast anchors you as it always does. In a house like this, bread is not just food. It is memory made edible and sometimes a form of communication. By midday, you find 3 crumbs on your bed, placed, not fallen. 1 near the pillow, 1 by the iron nail, 1 on the floor. You sweep them into your palm, then hesitate. Something about their placement feels deliberate. You lay them out again, carefully in the same triangle, and sit with them for a while. You remember stories Gilda told you when you first arrived, about servants who left tokens for the house itself. Breadcrumbs were offerings, messages even. Signs to say, "I know you're watching, I know you remember, I do too, you don't disturb them." Later, Gilda brings you a small book, bound in leather, barely a dozen pages, no title. "This isn't for reading aloud," she says. "Some words only work when whispered inside." You take it, and the air around it grows still. The cover is worn with touch. Inside, the script is cramped and slanted, like someone wrote it in haste. Or with a trembling hand, names mostly, instructions for markings, rhymes you've never heard before. One catches your eye. "Turn 3 times and bow once deep. Speak the name you wish to keep. Wrap in thread both red and black. Bury near the candle's back." You do not ask what it's for, not yet. That evening, as the kitchen dims and the soup simmers thick with lentils and bay, you feel something watching again. Not in malice, just presence, like someone standing in a doorway waiting to be spoken to. You walk the perimeter of the room, as Gilda sometimes does before bed. You press a palm to each wall, gently, and whisper one word. "Still." The floor creaks once in answer. Outside, the wind moves low across the orchard. The trees shiver, though no storm arrives. As you bank the fire for the night, you find a small object resting in the ash. a bone button carved with a spiral. Not yours, not Lisbeth's. You lift it carefully and carry it to the shelf where Gilda keeps forgotten things. You place it beside the red thread and the marked spoon. Your hands linger over them, not to touch, just to remember. Because now you understand, this house is made of more than stone and wood. It is made of memory, yes, but also of those who have remembered. And tonight, it remembers you gently. Evening settles over the manor like a quilt pulled tightly at the edges. The air is unusually warm for the season, thick with the smell of peat smoke and drying herbs. You light the hearth slowly, letting the flame take its time. The other servants are quiet tonight, not tense, just subdued, as if something gentle and heavy rests on their shoulders. Gilda hums while she slices dried apples into thin curls, her tune wandering without ever landing on a proper melody. After supper, the fire is left to burn low while Gilda brews a pot of lemon balm and thyme. She offers each of you a mug, and you sip it slowly by the hearth, letting the heat settle into your ribs. When the last of the light disappears beyond the chapel stones, she speaks without looking up. It's time you saw what the house remembers when it dreams. You don't ask what she means. You know now that some answers don't come in words. She hands you the small leather book again, the one with the slanted writing and the faded cover, and gestures to the back door, the one that leads to the orchard path. The night air meets you like a whisper, not cold, not biting, just thick with unseen presence. You follow the familiar stones past the herb garden and the lean-to, past the chapel's shadow and the edge of the trees, until the land dips slightly toward the southern fence. There, half buried in ivy, is a door. Not a cellar door, not one you've seen before. It is made of old wood, darker than the beams in the manor, with iron hinges in the shape of thorn branches. No lock, just a handle, worn smooth by use. You hesitate only once, then push it open. Inside there is no room, no walls, just steps leading down into a hollow space lit by a faint blue glow. You descend slowly, the scent of rosemary and damp parchment surrounds you. The walls here are carved with names, hundreds of them, etched small and careful into the stone. You run your fingers over them as you pass. Brana, Marlet, Isbeth. Names you do not know. Names the house has kept. At the bottom is a table. Plain, round, made of ash wood, with a single candle burning at its center. Around the flame sit 4 small objects, the bone button, the red thread, the iron spoon, and a 5th, a dried sprig of sage wrapped in black thread. You add your own offering without hesitation, a crumb from today's bread placed gently beside the spoon. The air shifts. It is not sudden. It is not frightening. It is acknowledgement. You are not alone, not in the way one is surrounded by people. You are not alone in the memory of the house. The candle flickers once, then steadies. From behind you, wind moves across the steps. Not sharp, but soft, as if passing through gently opened pages. You turn. No figure stands there, but something watches. Something waits. Not demanding, just present. You bow once, low and respectful, as Gilda once taught you. And the wind moves back the way it came, leaving only stillness in its wake. When you return to the kitchen, hours seem to have passed, though the fire has barely faded. Gilda sits with her hands folded in her lap, the applewood charm resting between her palms. "Did it speak?" she asks. You shake your head. She nods. "It won't, Nom. Not with words." Then she stands, pours you another mug of lemon balm tea, and says no more. That night, you sleep without dreams for the first time in weeks, and the manor does not knock. It only listens. The morning sun filters through the high windows in pale streaks, softening the stone walls and warming the wooden shelves where the dried herbs rest. There is no tension in the air today, not the tight kind that pulls at your collar, nor the heavy kind that drags your feet. Instead, the kitchen feels filled with an unfamiliar calm, like the deep exhale after long-held breath. You begin the day, as always, bread first, shaped with care, marked just once, the cut deep and honest. The dough responds to your touch like it's known your hands forever. Gilda doesn't instruct today. She watches quietly from her corner stool, sipping a broth brewed from fennel and mint. Her eyes are steady, not appraising, not cautious, just certain. She's seen what she needed to see. Lisbeth is humming to herself in the hallway. Her doll sits propped beside the window, its face now repaired, with a patch of faded cloth you don't remember sewing. Tom works outside, mending a gate hinge that hasn't squeaked in years, but suddenly loosened this morning. Everyone moves with quiet purpose, like the house itself is giving direction. At mid-morning, you are sent to the well again, alone this time, and without the usual blessing. The bucket lowers with ease, the crank smooth under your palm. When you draw it back up, the water glints with perfect clarity, and resting on the rim is a single rosemary leaf. You do not ask how it got there. You carry the water back in silence, aware now that these are not omens or tricks. They are messages, signs of recognition. The house has decided. Back in the kitchen, Gilda unwraps the old book again, opens it to the final page, and sets it on the table between you. No instructions, no warnings, just the book and the knowledge it carries. The ink here is darker, firmer. The words are names, but not of people. Names of places within the house, rooms that no longer exist, passageways sealed before Gilda was born, symbols you've seen before, now given language, and at the bottom of the page is a space left open. You understand what must be done. You take up the charcoal stub and write carefully, one letter at a time. Not your own name, but the one the house knows you by now. A name that feels both earned and inevitable. Gilda closes the book and places her hand lightly over the cover. "That will hold," she says simply. You don't answer. You feel it in your chest, the way the weight shifts. You are no longer just keeping the house clean. You are part of its memory now, its rhythm, its breathing. Later, you sweep the steps near the cellar door, not because they are dirty, but because you know the motion keeps the house attentive. You hang fresh rosemary above the sill. You rearrange the iron keys on their hook in the correct order: east, then west, then chapel, then well. Everything settles as it should, and then, just before dusk, you return to the spiral room. The blue light is gone now. In its place is warmth, a soft glow, as if the stones themselves remember fire. The table is still there, the button, the thread, the spoon, the crumb. But a new object has appeared, a folded square of cloth with delicate stitches along the edge. You lift it. It's an apron, not yours. Older, mended at the waist, stained at the hem. Inside the fold is a comb, bone, plain, carved with the initials B. You fold it again, place it gently back on the table, and stand quietly. In the stillness, you understand. Brana never left. She became part of the memory, and so will you. You return upstairs as the last light fades. The hearth crackles. The bread is ready. Gilda places a loaf on the table and tears off a piece for you, then another for herself. She says only this: "You've done what needed doing." You eat in silence, the taste richer than it's ever been. The manor hums gently around you. And for the first time you feel it, not watching, not warning, but but resting, because now it remembers you fully. The final days of autumn pass like a slow turning page. The trees beyond the chapel hold their last leaves with quiet dignity, and the wind that moves through the orchard no longer whispers warning. It simply carries the scent of drying bark and earth. In the manor, the air has taken on a steady hush, the kind that settles over places that have found peace in their own remembering. You move through your days not as a servant now, but as something closer to a caretaker, not of just tasks or tidiness, but of balance, of silence, of ritual, of memory. You still rise early, still sweep the floor, still knead the dough, but everything carries a different weight. Each motion is deliberate, each pause meaningful. You are part of the house's rhythm now. The others don't speak of the changes. Tom still mends what needs mending, though he no longer sings. Lisbeth still murmurs stories to her doll, but sometimes you find her watching the shadows as if listening to old friends. Gilda remains the hearthstone, still rooted, but her hands no longer hover when you take charge. She's teaching with her silences now. The cellar door stays closed most days, but not out of fear. You know now that things only need tending when they stir, and this season the spiral beneath the house sleeps. You leave offerings when it feels right, a crust of bread, a ribbon from Lisbeth's apron, a piece of cracked soap pressed with rosemary. Small tokens to say, I see you, I remember, I serve. One evening, long after the bread is baked and the fire is banked low, you take a final walk through the quiet house. You touch the old stone by the scullery, now warm with breath instead of cold warning. You glance toward the spice shelf where the wall once changed, and it remains, solid, still, as though the memory it held has settled. In the hall near the chapel, you pause. Moonlight spills through the window, silvering the floor in a way that makes everything look dreamlike. There, sitting neatly at the edge of the light, is the shawl. The same one you saw on the woman, by the well, by the hedge, by the orchard. You do not approach, you do not need to. You simply bow, not low, not performative, just enough. A gesture of peace between those who keep and those who remember. When you return to the loft, the fire's glow reaches the far corners of the room. The cat sleeps curled near the hearth, its belly rising in slow, even breaths. The wind rattles gently at the window pane, not to be let in, but to remind you it's still out there, watching over the orchard, the stone, the well. You lie down beneath your quilt, the applewood charm now worn smooth from nights held in your palm. Your eyes close slowly, not from exhaustion, but ease. The house does not speak. It does not need to. It has remembered you, and in turn you have remembered it, and in that remembering